Okay, this is part two of the woman in the snow. Doing a quick recap. We talked about the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott that happened in 1955 to 1956, and how blacks were made to sit in the back of the bus and they were not able to be drivers. But once Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks decided to have the bus boycott, then they did that for a year, a little over a year actually, and it was very successful. The bus company ended up allowing the blacks to sit where they wanted to sit, and they also even began to allow black bus drivers. So, but this is prior to that. So, um, there was this bus driver named Grady Bishop. He worked for Metro Bus Service, and he was given the charge. He was a new driver, so he didn't have his own route. He was given the charge of doing the Hall Street Express. That was the route he was supposed to take, and he didn't like it at all. But there was a snow fall. That was a huge snow prediction, and he told him, listen. He being the boss told him, listen, when it starts to get bad out there, you can come on in. But he just didn't care. He just was like, oh, I don't like driving all these black people. But he was being respectful to his boss. Plus, he needed the job because they were going through a really bad recession at the time. So he did what he was supposed to do, and he decided to do the route. And he was talking to people kind of crazy, but they just kind of looked at him and like whatever, and then just kind of going with their day. Then he had a really snide remark with this one black lady that was actually his last passenger, and she kind of snapped back at him, and he didn't like that. So now we're going on to today. That's when his headlights picked up the figure of a woman running in the snow without a hat, gloves, or boots. Although she pulled a shawl over the lightweight jacket and flimsy dress she was wearing, her clothing offered little protection against the elements. As she pressed forward against the driving snow and wind, Grady saw the woman was very young, no more than 20, and she was clutching something close to her body. What was it? Then Grady saw the baby, a small bundle wrapped in a faded pink blanket. These people, Grady sighed, opening the door. The woman stumbled up the steps, escaping the wind that mercilessly ripped at her petite frame. Look here, I've closed down the route. I'm taking the bus in. The big gulping sobs the woman laid on her story before him. I need help, please. My husband's gone to Memphis looking for work. Our baby's sick, real sick. She needs to get to the hospital. I know she'll die if I don't get help. Well, I gotta go by the hospital on the way back to the station. Sorry, to the garage. You can ride that far. Grady nodded for her to pay. The woman looked at the floor. Well, pay up and get on the back of the bus. Get onto the back of the bus so I can get out of here. I don't have the fare, she said, quickly adding, but if you let me ride, I promise to bring it to you in the morning. Give an inch, y'all want a mile. You know the rules. No money, no ride. Oh, please, the young woman cried. Feel her little head. It's so hot. She held the baby to him. Grady recoiled. Desperately, the woman looked for something to bargain with. Here, she said, taking off her wedding ring. Take this. It's gold. But please don't make me get off this bus. He opened the door. The winds howled savagely. Please, the woman begged. Go on now. Go on home now. You young gals get hysterical over a little fever. Nothing. It'll be fine in the morning. As he shut the door, the last sounds he heard were the mother's sobs, the baby's wail, and the moaning wind. Grady dismissed the incident until the next morning when he read that it had been a record snowfall. His eyes were drawn to a small article about a colored woman and a child found frozen to death on Hall Street. No one seemed to know where the woman was going or why. No one but Grady. That gal should have done like I told her and gone on home, he said, turning to the comics. It was exactly 1 year later, on the anniversary of the record snowstorm, that Grady was assigned the Hall Street Express again. Just as before, a storm heaped several inches of snow onto the city in a matter of hours, making driving extremely hazardous. By nightfall, Grady decided to close the route, but just as he was making the turnaround at the East Side Loop, his headlights picked up a woman running in the snow, the same woman he'd seen in the previous year. Death hadn't altered her desperation. Still holding on to the blanketed baby, the small-framed woman pathetically struggled to reach the bus. Grady closed his eyes but couldn't keep them shut. She was still coming, but from where? The answer was too terrible to consider, so he chose to let his mind find a more reasonable explanation. From some dark corner of his childhood, he heard his father's voice, slurred by alcohol, mocking him. "It ain't the same woman, dummy. You know how they all look alike." Grady remembered his father with bitterness and swore at the thought of him. This was the same woman, Grady argued with his father's memory, taking no comfort in being right. Grady watched the woman's movements breathlessly as she stepped out of the headlight beam and approached the door. She stood outside the door waiting. The gray coldness of fear slipped into the driver's seat. Grady sucked air into his lungs in big gulps, feeling out of control. Fear moved his foot to the gas pedal, careening the bus out onto oncoming traffic. Headlights, a truck. Fear made Grady hit the brakes. The back of the bus went into a sliding spin, slamming into the tree. Grady's stomach crushed against the steering wheel, rupturing his liver and spleen. "You really done it now, lunkhead." As he drifted into the final darkness, he heard the woman's sobs, a baby's wailing, or was it just the wind? All right, that's the end of this section. And I'm going to show you your questions again. And alrighty.